we are going to discuss, just learn the concept, because whatever the questions we are going to discuss that are from the different chapters of your module C, that means you are going to learn the different concept in this class. Okay, so if you're finding anything is important, just note down that. Okay, so if you're new on the Officers Adda 247, so just hit the subscribe button so that you can get regular update from our site, and download the Adda 247 application so that you can get everything at a one place. Okay, so before to start this class, the one thing, that the one important announcement for all of you, that our selection batch is going to start from the 20th of May. Just remember, this is a last chance where you can just enroll in our batches, and from this 20th of May you are going to learn very speedily, like a very speedily, as well as a very refreshed content by us, and whatever the sessions we are going to deliver, that all based on the fully exam oriented as well as the quality content you are going to get, because we just actually concentrate, like we are not prepare you only for the 50 marks, we actually prepare you for the 70 plus 80 plus marks. So just this is a last chance where you can just enroll in a fresh class of by us. Okay, so in this selection batch you're going to get the multiple things like the 80 plus ebooks, 80 plus mock test, as well as the 60 plus 5 65 plus hours, or you can say just live classes you are going to get. Okay, so and this is also a very minimal price you are going to get. Just apply the code Y42. You just do not need to pay the full amount for this. You only have to just apply the code Y422, and with this code you are going to get the big discount on this batches. Okay, so as well as you can also just enroll in the individual batches of the PPB, AP and LRAB. Okay, so let's start today's class with the very first question. Just try to solve by your side if you're finding just because we are going to understand a very important concept from this, and the same type of the questions you may get in the examination, so please concentrate on that. Okay, so whenever we're talking about the net working capital, what it actually means that, okay, whenever we're talking about the net working capital, we know that the net working capital, it is nothing but the excess of the current asset over the current liabilities. Or you can also understand the net working, why I'm just saying that the excess of the current asset over the current liabilities, because the same type of the question we actually saw in the previous February session, where the question is about the net working capital. So you have to understand like every term here, right? So when we're talking about the net working capital, you have to understand it is just equals to the current asset minus current liability, right? Now, whenever we're talking about the current asset, so we have to understand whenever we're talking about the, like in the categories of the current asset, our cash that actually comes in the category of the current asset, our account receivables that is actually comes under the current asset category. Okay, so that cash, account receivables, bank account, that actually comes under the category of the current asset, as well as the inventory, prepaid expenses, that all comes under the current asset category, right? But in this question you can understand the cash and account receivables are given, so you can understand this is the current asset given, this is the current asset given, right? Now the total liabilities and the non-current liabilities are given. Whenever in the question you may get, like I always explained you, whenever in the question you may get like the total liabilities, you have to just make like this. Okay, and just write your current liability and the non-current liability. Now just try to understand a very important thing, that the non-current liabilities are given while we just require the current liabilities. Okay, just try to understand the net working capital is what? Net working capital, that is equal to the current asset minus current liability. That means we require the current asset information as well as we require the current liabilities information. Okay, so now if I just say total liabilities, that is given the 2 lakh rupees, right? And the non-current liabilities, that is given the 1 lakh rupees. So what would be the value of the current liabilities? So definitely it would be become what? It would be the 1 lakh rupees, right? So now you can just tell me here that if I have to find out the net working capital, how I find that? You will say that the current asset value, that would be the 5 lakh plus 1 lakh. Okay, so that would be equal to the 6 lakh minus current liabilities value, that is 1 lakh, just right here. Okay, so what would be the total value here for the net working capital? You can understand the net working capital, that would be equal to the 5 lakh. The correct answer, that would be the first option, that would be the correct in this context. Okay, I'm hoping that everyone just understanding this. Okay, Just try to keep everything in a very simple way. Whenever we're talking about the net working capital, we know that the net working capital is nothing but the current asset minus current liability. Now the very important thing you have to recognize, like what the current assets are given and what are the current liabilities are given. Okay, so this is how we actually solve the questions in the examination also. I'm hoping that everyone just understood this. Okay, now just try to solve the another question. These all type of the questions are very important in terms of the examination. Here the one change that you have to do, just a minute for that. Okay, in this question you actually have to find out inventory turnover ratio. Okay, just a minute for that. You have to find out inventory turnover ratio. Okay, right. Okay. So, if I have to find out the inventory turnover ratio in this question, because the revenue from the operations are given, average inventory are given, gross profit ratio is given. So, how to calculate this kind of the questions in the examination, that we have to understand. Okay. So now the very important thing, that because in the examination you may get the questions like where you have to find out the gross profit ratio, working capital. Okay, so you just have to know like what terms represents what. Okay, so when we're talking about the inventory turnover ratio, we know the formula, that is our cost of sales or the cost of goods sold, and it is divided by the average inventory, right? So that is the formula for your inventory turnover ratio. That is the formula for your inventory turnover ratio. Now just tell me one thing here. Average inventory is given, but the cost of goods sold, that we have to calculate, right? So now you having the information, that is revenue from the operations, and the revenue from the operations is nothing but just understandable as a sales, right? That means you having the sales. Now the another thing that is given, the gross profit ratio. So whenever we're talking about the gross profit ratio, you have to understand gross profit ratio is nothing but the gross profit, and it is divided by the net sales and multiplied with the 100. Okay, so that is actually understandable as a gross profit ratio. Now if it is given the 10%, so you can understand, if it is given the 10%, so you can understand this would be the 10, and it would be divided, it would be your 10%. Okay, just write a gross profit ratio we have to find out. So gross profit, that would be this, and the net sales, that would be given here 4 lakh. Okay, so now if I have to find out, we can avoid this 100, because we are only talking about the gross profit ratio. This is already given in the percentage. Okay, so you can just understand this is a 10%, we can just write here. So if I have to find out the gross profit here, so what would be the value of the gross profit, you will just calculate here. So this would be 10% of the 4 lakh rupees, right? So what would be the value of this? This would be the value of the 40,000 rupees. Okay, so what would be the value of this? This would be the value of the 40,000 rupees, right? So this would be the value of the gross profit. Now we all know the formula for the gross profit, that is gross profit will be equal to your sales minus cost of goods sold. Now just tell me one thing here, if I have to find out the cost of goods sold, so this would be equal to what? The sales is given 4 lakh. Just do not confuse in the examination with the term of the revenue from the operations and the cost of revenue from the operation. The very important thing I just want to tell you here, just do not confuse between the revenue from the operation and the cost of revenue from the operations. You have to understand, whenever we're talking about the revenue from the operations, that actually the sales of your company, and when we're talking about the cost of revenue from the operations, you have to understand we are talking about the cost of goods sold or cost of the sales. Okay, so the different terms that we can just understand, like the revenue from the operations, that is the sales, and the cost of revenue from the operations, that actually the cost of goods sold, right? Now the 4 lakh, this would be 4 lakh, and this would be minus with the 40,000 rupees. So this value would become the 3,60,000 rupees. Okay, so now we only have to put this value here, that would be 3,60,000, and it would be divided by the average inventory, which is given 55,000 rupees. Now just find out what would be the answer of this question. Just calculate this. Okay, so this would be equal to the your 6.55 something. Okay, 6.55 times the correct answer, that would be the A in this question. Okay, so that's how we actually solve the questions. Look, what the information that is given about the gross profit ratio is given. So we know the gross profit ratio is nothing but the your gross profit, and it is divided by the net sales. Okay, now this is given the 10%, so we can just write here 10%, and it would be divided, it would be equal to the gross profit divided by the net sales. Now we know the gross profit, how we can just calculate the gross profit, that would be equal to your 40,000 rupees. Okay, now we know the formula for the gross profit, that is sales minus cost of goods sold. Or you can also understand, this is because the revenue from the operations, you can understand it is actually the sales. Okay, so whenever we're talking about like the sales is given, and we have to just find out the cost of goods sold, and the gross profit is also given. So with this we actually solve the cost of goods sold. Okay, now the inventory turnover ratio, if we have to find out, we know that the inventory turnover ratio is equal to the cost of goods sold, and it is divided by the average inventory. Okay, so this would be your like this is how you can just solve the questions in the examination. I'm hoping that everyone just understanding this, right? Okay, hit the like button, guys. Okay, hit the like button and share this video to your friends, so that maximum number of our bankers can join with us in this session. Okay, next question. Loan from the bank at the rate of 12% per annum is 8 lakh rupees. Interest on the loan is due for the whole year. We are talking about any financial year. Okay, so for the whole year. So amount shown on the liability side of the balance sheet. We know the very important thing whenever we're talking about the balance sheet. One thing is a asset, another thing that is a liability. And whenever we're talking about the any kind of the bank loan, that obviously will be on the part of your liabilities, right? Liabilities of the company, and the liabilities of the company that actually given the 8 lakh rupees. Now the question is, if the 12% that is actually payable on this, like the interest we have to pay, that means if I have to just solve the 8 lakh with the rate of the 12% per annum, that means the interest that would be equal to you 96,000 rupees, right? Okay, so this would be your interest for this loan, right? So now if I have to just tell that after the 1 year we are talking about, what will be the total liability on the balance sheet that will be reflect, then your answer should be 8 lakh plus 96,000. So that would be equal to the 8 lakh 96,000. Okay, that would be your correct answer. Okay, because the interest we also have to pay on this, right? So that's how we actually solve the questions. I'm hoping that if you're just understanding this, right? Now the next question. From the following, sales are equal to, when we talk about the sales are equal to, as we discussed in the previous questions also, we know the formula for the sales, or in the examination that also comes in the way, like you have to understand whenever the questions is given, like in this, like the sales is equal to, you can also understand as a revenue from operation. Okay, and you can also understand whenever we're talking about the cost of goods sold, it is just given as a cost of revenue from operation. That's it. Okay, so these kind of the questions that may just given in the examination in these ways. Okay, so that you also have to understand, right? So when I'm talking about from the following, sales are equal to what, then you will just tell me what would be the answer of this question, so you can understand. Whenever we're talking about the sales, you can understand the sales is actually equals to your what we understand by the formula for the gross profit. Gross profit is equal to sales minus cost of goods sold. Now the question is, what will be the value of the sales? So what you will take, what you will tell, the gross profit plus cost of goods sold, and that would be the answer of this question. Okay, so this is how we actually solve the questions. Okay, I'm hoping that everyone just understanding the way we are just solving the each and every question. Okay, right? Now the next question, just do by your side. Next question, just do by your side. Just try to solve this question. So in this question, from the following information of the accounting year, that all are given, like the opening capital, drawings, closing capital added during the year, that all are giving. Okay, so how to calculate the profit or loss for the year, we have to just find out here. So like I just always explained you that how you should just find out like the profit and loss if the opening capital and the closing capital, that all the datas are given for the question. So the very first thing that what you have to do, just try to understand here, like whenever you have to write in this way. Okay, like the opening capital is given, what it is given, that is 60,000, just write here. After that drawings are given, that is 5,000. Okay, so if I just making the financial year, and this is the financial year starting, because when we talk about the opening capital, that you can understand it is a starting capital. So that is actually started from the 60,000 rupees. Now after that the drawings are of the 5,000 rupees, so you will write here that is a minus 5,000. Okay, after that capital added during the year, that is 10,000. That means capital added during the years, that is 10,000. Just write in this way. Okay, now closing capital, that is 90,000. That means closing capital that is given the 90,000. Now just tell me here that we started from the 60. 60 minus 5, that is 55, and 55 plus 10, that is 65,000 rupees. That should be our capital. But it is, it is just closing capital, that is 90,000. That means the difference between this, that actually represents the profit for the company, and profit for how much, that would be the 25,000, because 90,000 minus 65,000, that would be equal to the 25,000. Okay, so this is how we can just solve the most difficult questions in the examination in a very simple way, if we are just using the right approach. Okay, so what we exactly have to do, you have to start from the financial year, like you have to start from the when we starting from the beginning of the financial year. So just write the capital of this, and after that just write the capital of this. So whatever the difference you are getting, like the whatever the capital that should remain, like after the drawings, after just adding the amount of the money, so whatever the difference between the this capital and the closing capital, that actually considered with the profit or loss for the company. Okay, so this is how we actually solve the questions in the examination also, right? Next question. The following amounts were payable on issue of the shares by a company: 3 rupees on the application, 3 rupees on the allotment, 2 rupees on the first call, 2 rupees on the final call. Okay, as you can understand, as a shareholder, like holding 500 shares, paid only application and allotment money, whereas Y holding 400 shares did not pay a final call, so amount of the call scenario will be. Whenever we talk about the call scenario, you can understand this is just a due amount which is not payable by the shareholders. This is due amount which is not paid by the shareholders, that is known as a calls in area account. Okay, so these all are the installments are written, like the application is application, allotment, and after allotment whatever the installments we are to calling, that would be considered as a first call. After that the second call, if there are four installments we are talking about. Okay, so this is the application where the 3 rupees we are talking about. This is your allotment where 3 rupees we are talking about, 2 rupees on the first call and the 2 rupees on the final call. Okay, so this would consist as a 10 rupees if you just sum up all this, right? Now the question is S holding 500 shares. That means S, you can consider here that S is a shareholder for the company. Okay, so as consider the 500 shares, paid only application and allotment money. You can understand call scenario what? Call scenario, suppose that company demanded this rupee, okay, but shareholder did not pay. So that you can understand this amount will goes into the calls in area. Now, if I'm talking about the person of the A, like the person of the S, just a minute. If I'm talking about the shareholder S, so S shareholders having the 500 shares, and S only pays the application and allotment money, while S just did not pay the first call and the second call. That means you can understand, if you are talking about the 500 rupees, you can understand S have to make the 2000 rupees to the company, like the 2 rupees of the first call and the 2 rupees of the second call. Okay, now when we talk about like where is Y holding the 400 shares, so now you can understand Y is another shareholder, and Y having the 400 shares. while Y did not pay a final call. Final call you can understand the second, or you can also understand as a final call. That is of the 2 rupees. You can understand this will be considered as a 800 rupees. Okay. So now if the question is amount of the calls in area, that will be, so the answer that would be your 2800. That would be the correct answer for this question. Okay, so this is how we actually solve. You only have to understand what do we mean by the calls in area. Okay, so what do we mean by the calls in area? Calls in area, you can understand if any amount that is just due on the shareholder, but shareholder did not pay that amount, so that means that amount goes into the calls in area account. Okay, so this is how we actually solve the questions. Right now, next question, the formula for the finding out debt equity ratio. You know, whenever we're talking about like any chapter, any formula in the ratio analysis chapter, what I told you that you never have to memorize any formulas. You will be able to just formulate by your own. Like if we're talking about the debt equity ratio, you can understand here we are talking about the debt and equity. Okay, so whenever we're talking about the debt, we usually just understand, or we usually just consider the long-term liabilities of the company instead of the short-term liabilities. So what I will write here, that long-term liabilities, and it would be divided by the equity. And equity is what? Equity is your shareholders fund. Okay, so now tell me what would be the answer of this question. That would be correct. That would be the A, like the long-term debts, and it would be divided by the shareholders fund. Okay, so this is how we actually solve the questions in the examination also, right? Next question. So now this is a profit and the capital at the end, plus this is given minus capital introduced minus capital in the beginning. So in this question mark, what would be the answer of this? And you know, this is a very important question, like from the exam point of view. You just have to understand like in what way we are just going to solve. What I told you, that we have to consider like this is a financial starting. Okay, and we are talking about this is a initial capital or big capital at the beginning, and this is a capital at the end, right? So when we talk about the capital at the end, and here we are talking about the capital at the beginning, right? So now just tell me here, if I have to just find out the profit, now how I can just find out the profit? What I told you, that I told you that just consider the capital at the beginning minus drawings plus extra amount you just included in this. Okay, so after that, just you have to, if you have to just find out the profit or loss, you have to just find out the difference between the capital at the end minus capital at the, like whatever the capital here we are just going to conclude. Okay, that I just explained you in the previous question. So now if I'm just talking about that, I am just writing here profit, and I'm just writing here that the capital at end minus. Okay, so now just tell me that what it would be, that the capital at the beginning minus drawings plus extra amount that you introduced. Okay, so now just tell me very important thing, that whatever the positive term, that actually is just going to be negative, and whatever the negative term, that is just going to be positive. So what I will just write here in this question mark, I will just write the drawings. So the drawings, that should be, look, if I just write here, that is the capital at beginning. Okay, and if I just write the minus drawing. Okay, okay, plus extra amount that you introduced. So now if you just open this brackets, then you will just understand capital at the end minus capital at the beginning plus drawings. So in this question mark, there you will be just mentioned the drawings, and this is a very important question from exam point of view. Okay, now I'm just hoping that everyone just understood this. Next question. The subscribed capital of the company is 80 lakh rupees, and the nominal value of the share is 100 rupees each, and there were no calls in area till the final call was made. The final call made was paid on 77,500 shares only. The balance in the calls in area amounted to this. So calculate the final call on the share. Look how complicated this question is looking. You know, whenever we're talking about the subscribed capital, you can understand like the subscribed capital, like company issued some shares, and just it is subscribed by the public. Okay, suppose that company issued for the you can understand for the 90 lakh rupees. Okay, but it is subscribed capital, there would be just a 80 lakh rupees. So you can understand it is less subscribed by the public. Okay, so now if I just talk about the very important thing, the subscribed capital that is given the 80 lakh rupees, that means you can understand, and the e share value that is 100. So you will just understand the 80,000, and that would be like the 80,000 shares, 80,000 shares at the like the 100 rupees per share, like one share value that you can understand. Company actually just yeah, also you can also understand as a public actually subscribe for the 80,000 shares, and each share value is a 100 rupees. Okay, so that is actually you're going to understand this. Now if I just ask you that there were no calls in area till the final call was made, that means no calls in area, that means what we understand by the calls in area, that means every shareholder paid the all the installments, but till the final call was made. Now you understand the final call was made on the 77,500 share. That means if I just talk about the only 77,500, that means all installments are getting by the companies from the shareholders, but on the final call the company actually receiving the amount for the 77,500 shares only. Now just tell me the balance in the call scenario that is representing the 62,500. So calculate the final call on the share. That means what is the amount of the final call on the share. Okay, now just tell me that's 80,000 shares, that is actually the shareholders for the like the 80,000 share that is distributed in the public, and the company is getting the 77,500 shares the final call. That means if I just have to deduct here, if I just having to deduct this, so that what would be it would be equal to what, that would be 2,500, right? So when we talk about like companies not getting the final call for the 2,500 shares, right, and calls in area amount that is given the 60 to 2,500 rupees. So now if I just ask you that calculate the final call on the share, that means you can understand this would be equal to what, this would be equal to the 25 rupees. That means final call that has been called up by the company for the 25 rupees. That would be the answer for this question. Okay, so this is how we actually solve the questions. I hope everyone just understanding this. I'm hoping that everyone just understood this now, right? So this is how we actually solve the questions in the examination also, right? So that's all for this session, and if you just like this session, just do not forget to hit the like button and share this video to your friends so that maximum number of our bankers and colleagues join with us in this kind of the sessions regularly. Okay, so just hit the like button guys, and our target batch and our the selection batch that actually just going to be start. So target batch that is actually running, and the selection batch is going to start from the 20th of May, and you may find like the batches in the both of the languages, like the bilingual as well as the English medium batches. So you only have to use a code that is Y422, and with this code you are going to get the big discount on the batches that is actually running on the, or like on the batches or on for your like examination. Okay, so this is your selection batch, or where you are just going to get like the batches in the English medium as well as the bilingual you are going to get, and this is going to start from the 20th of May. And do not just forget to apply the code Y422, because you just do not need to pay the full amount for this. Okay, you only have to use the code Y422. So thank you everyone for joining me in this session, and I am hoping that everyone just understood this session in a very fine way. Now we will meet on the tomorrow at the same time at the 7 a.m. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining me in this session.